আন্তঃৰাষ্ট্ৰীয় মঞ্চত খিলঞ্জীয়াৰ চনদৰ বিৰুদ্ধে ভাৰত চৰকাৰে লোৱা স্থিতিৰ কথা ৰাজহুৱা। মহাসংঘৰ কাৰ্যকৰী সভাপতি মতিউৰ ৰহমানে এই ব্যাখ্যা উল্লেখ কৰে। আগন্তুক 9 আগষ্টৰ বিশ্ব খিলঞ্জীয়া দিৱস উপলক্ষে আজি এছিয়া ইণ্ডিজিনিয়াছ পিপুলছ পেক্ট, ইণ্ডিজিনিয়াছ পিপুলছ হিউমেন ৰাইট ডিফেণ্ডাৰ্ছ নেটৱৰ্ক এছিয়া, ডেলিগেশ্যন অৱ দি ইউৰোপিয়ান ইউনিয়ন টু থাইলেণ্ড, ফ্ৰণ্টলাইন ডিফেণ্ডাৰ্ছৰ যৌথ উদ্যোগত অষ্ট্ৰেলিয়াৰ ডাবলিন চহৰৰ পৰা 6 আগষ্টত দিনৰ 1:30 বজাৰ পৰা 3:30 বজালৈ গুৰুত্বপূৰ্ণ ৱেবিনাৰ অনুষ্ঠিত হয়। খিলঞ্জীয়াৰ মানৱ অধিকাৰ ৰক্ষকে নতুন সামাজিক যোগাযোগৰ বাবে কি বুজায় আৰু কি প্ৰয়োজন শীৰ্ষক আলোচনা অনুষ্ঠিত হয়। উদ্বোধনী ভাষণ দিছিল ডেলিগেশ্যন অৱ দি ইউৰোপিয়ান ইউনিয়ন টু থাইলেণ্ডৰ সহযোগী সদস্যা ফ্ৰান্সিস্কা গিলিয়ে। আলোচনাৰ আঁত ধৰিছিল এনা জেবনা, BHRRC ইংলেণ্ডে। সামৰণি মন্তব্য আগবঢ়াইছিল গামে চিমৰে, মহাসচিব এছিয়া ইণ্ডিজিনিয়াছ পিপুলছ পেক্ট। বক্তাসকল আছিল ক্ৰমে দুৰ্গামণি ৰায়, LAACUR NIP নেপাল, এলিনা হৰ AWN ঝাৰখণ্ড ইণ্ডিয়া, ৰাছেল S মাৰিনো CPA ফিলিপাইনছ, মেছলা ৰেম্পেডো JOAS মালয়েছিয়া, খোকন চুইটেন মুৰ্মু KAPAEE NGF বাংলাদেশ, কে জুং IPHRD মায়ানমাৰ, কিৰাণ ঘ্ৰাই চিচুৱাং NIPT থাইলেণ্ড। অসম সন্মিলিত মহাসংঘৰ হৈ কাৰ্যকৰী সভাপতি মতিউৰ ৰহমানে কয় যে ভাৰত চৰকাৰে ৰাষ্ট্ৰসংঘৰ খিলঞ্জীয়াসকলৰ অধিকাৰ চনদ সম্পৰ্কে ভোটদান কৰি দায়বদ্ধ হৈ থকাৰ পিছতো সুপ্ৰিম কোৰ্টত চনদৰ বিৰুদ্ধে শপতনামা দি কৈছে যে পূৰ্ণ সমৰ্থন নাই। মহাসংঘই ৰাষ্ট্ৰসংঘৰ চনদ অসমত কাৰ্যকৰী কৰিবলৈ সুপ্ৰিম কোৰ্টক ভাৰত চৰকাৰক এটা নিৰ্দেশনা দিবলৈ আহ্বান জনাই তৰা 562/2012 নং গোচৰৰ শপতনামাত ভাৰত চৰকাৰে 2013 চনত এইদৰে কৈছিল। মহাসংঘৰ উজনি অসমৰ সমন্বয়ক অনুপায়নধাৰেও অংশগ্ৰহণ কৰে উক্ত ঘটনাত। ব্যুৰো ৰিপৰ্ট, পাটকাই টিভি।
Welcome you everybody. I am from Assam, at the ancient capital of Assam, Gargaon now. I want to say from Assam Sanmilita Maha Sangha that for implementation of UNDRIP, we request the government of India but do nothing, and so we have submitted a writ petition 562/2012 in the year 2012 and 2013 and 14, 2 years hearing is going on, and after that 2 judges bench referred our writ petition to 5-member constitution bench. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the open physical hearing of the Supreme Court is stopped. So we are facing a lot of troubles now. So what shall we do in the situation? Number 3, the government of India also voted in favor of the UNDRIP with 143 countries of the world in 13 September 2007 at Geneva. But sorry to say that in the Supreme Court, in our writ petition, the government of India said by their affidavit that they have not fully support to the UNDRIP. So it is very disgusting. And what shall we do now? Fourth, all the guidelines of UNDRIP is violated by the government of India. So what shall we do? Number 5, the indigenous people being worst affected by the COVID-19, but the government is failed to consider any specific plans for the indigenous people. So what shall we do now? 6, the medicine and the vaccine for COVID-19 pandemic is not available in the interior village of indigenous people of Assam. So this is the real situation. What shall we do? Number 7, our indigenous women selling different hygienic food products and materials in the markets. But due to COVID-19, the indigenous women heavily affected. So what shall we do? Number 8, the government totally violating the guidelines of UNICEF, ILO, and FAO for the indigenous people during the COVID-19 pandemic situation. So what shall we do in this regard? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And maybe I will turn to Elina first, if you have any thoughts, and then to others. I don't expect we'll be able to cover all of those questions, but Elina, if you want to pick anything out and provide your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Rahmanji, for your questions. I think more or less this is the same situation in whole Asia, what you're saying, because UNDRIP is in India is it's a moral binding. It's not a legal binding that government, that has, like just kept the face that they are supporting, but with the condition that all Indians are indigenous. So that's a really very like we can't really, we have to really go for more in a different way. But yeah, of course, this during the pandemic, courts were closed, so that I don't know exactly now how the situation in Northeast, but now it's open, so those things can be continued. Maybe you can try again, but exactly I don't know what the situation, so in each reason that is we have to see. Yeah, but yeah, I don't have much to say in this, but yeah, still it's a serious question for all of us, so we have to really ponder over to this question. Yeah, collectively we have to think what to do.
Thank you, Elina. And yeah, indeed, it's a collective discussion. So does anyone else from the speakers want to come in on any of the questions that Mathieu posed?
ผมครับพี่ครับ
Yes,
เกรียงไกรครับประเทศไทยนะครับสองประเด็นครับผมอยากให้ภาคีต่างประเทศหรือว่าองค์กรที่ช่วยเหลือนักปกป้องสิทธิ์เนี่ยช่วยติดตามแล้วก็ช่วยกดดันกลไกรัฐโดยเฉพาะกระทรวงที่เกี่ยวข้องกับทรัพยากรป่าไม้ในพื้นที่ดั้งเดิมของพี่น้องชนเผ่าพื้นเมืองให้หลังจากประกาศพื้นที่กลุ่มป่าแก่งกระจานเป็นมรดกโลกเนี่ยเราอยากจะให้มีความมั่นใจได้ว่าเขาจะแก้ปัญหาพี่น้องที่ยังค้างคาอยู่เนี่ยให้ได้รับการแก้ปัญหาให้ครบถ้วนให้พี่น้องสามารถดำเนินชีวิตได้อยู่นะครับเพื่อจะยืนยันได้ว่ามรดกโลกที่ประเทศไทยได้มาเนี่ยมันสง่างามและงดงามกับคนทั่วโลกไม่ใช่เป็นมรดกโลกที่มีคราบน้ำตาหรือมีคราบเลือดของพี่น้องกะเหรี่ยงในพื้นที่ตรงนั้นนะครับส่วนที่สองก็คืออยากจะให้องค์กรหน่วยงานสากลต่างๆหรือเครือข่ายต่างๆทั่วโลกนะครับช่วยสื่อสารและส่งสัญญาณมาที่รัฐประเทศไทยนะครับว่าสิ่งที่พี่น้องเครือข่ายชนเผ่าพื้นเมืองกำลังขับเคลื่อนเรื่องนโยบายหรือกฎหมายที่เกี่ยวข้องกับกลุ่มชาติพันธุ์หรือกลุ่มชนเผ่าพื้นเมืองเนี่ยเป็นความยั่งยืนของรัฐไทยด้วยนะครับและก็ที่สำคัญก็คือวันชนเผ่าพื้นเมืองโลกวันที่9 สิงหาเนี่ยมันสัญญาณนี้คือสัญลักษณ์การขับเคลื่อนกฎหมายเนี่ยคือสัญญาประชาคมใหม่ที่คนไทยพี่น้องเครือข่ายชนเผ่าพื้นเมืองไทยเนี่ยต้องการอยากให้เกิดเป็นของขวัญเป็นความยั่งยืนจริงครับผม
Yeah, what I'm thinking is that the indigenous peoples human rights defenders are, they are receiving threat and intimidation as well. They are defending rights in the ground. So what I would like to suggest here is that they need to be united and actually they need to try to get different options, different strategies and approaches. They need to add up, maybe legal litigations, maybe, that they can do like this. Thank you.
Kokon, did you want to come in?
Yes, I want to come in. Actually, I want to go through the first question and the second question. First one, I want to respond is about the lot of questions of Nepal about from Assam, India, and to respond this question, how we are dealing in Bangladesh is that when the government is not responding to many problems, then we are doing that to finding ourselves in the consultating process, both through the government as well as the CSO. There is a platform in Bangladesh called Citizen Platform of Bangladesh, and all the CSOs from the mainstream community as well as indigenous peoples, we are raising our voices there, and they have consulted with the government, as well as government have different slot through the whole society approach, and we are also consulting and raising our demands through that process. And as well as we and consult with the National Human Rights Commission for legally raising our voices. As well as they can go through the global forum that's called the High Level Political Forum, as well as voluntary national reviews. And also they could involve in lobby and advocacy through the donors as well as the diplomatic missions, so that they could pressure the government of India in the UN forum as well as other regional forum. That is that is my response for the Assams. And for the
turn to Mr. Gam Ashimray, Secretary General of Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact, who will provide some summary remarks and special remarks at the end. Thank you so much, Gam.
Thank you, Anna, and greetings to all of you. It's been quite touching to listen to all the speakers and the presentations. I really thank them for enriching this conversation and our understanding of the issue. Of course, here I'm to do a summation, so I'll just try to construct the picture of what we have just heard in a way that is possible. It was very rich, so I will not be able to fully do justice to that. But some of the key issues that indicates towards the kind of a larger trend in Asia is perhaps what I will try to do. First thing is that, as we heard, what we have seen is that during this COVID period, and one speaker mentioned that COVID has been weaponized. So how has this been weaponized? As I heard, one is in the form of enacting detrimental laws and criminalizing indigenous peoples further by using this COVID as a time when people cannot go to the courts or cannot also fully protest, and when people are also aching and fighting and struggling to survive in this very difficult situation. And in that, we have heard this whole narration that how people have tried to survive when it was locked down. They have to walk for hundreds of miles with their wife and children in order to survive, and how people have died, and how pregnant women, etc., have also suffered in this very difficult time. So that's one of the kind of challenges that went through, along with these issues of livelihood and access to their own forest and the resources that they have in their own land, territories, and resources. Now, the other very glaring thing that we see, of course, in Asia is this enactment of these very detrimental laws and this criminalization in which a lot of activists, defenders, and even communities in general have been criminalized by red tagging and constructing false charges against them to immobilize them and to pin them down. And in this, we have seen that actually hundreds have been actually killed, and also thousands have been kind of put with false charges. And then along this, we have seen that the courts were closed. People could not access justice. And with this, land grabbing has continued. And then land diversion or land use change have happened in the name of providing solutions, that is for agricultural land and so on. So this kind of false solutions that is actually detrimental to the communities were really pushed by the government. Now, what we also saw from all this is that very clearly there is a breakdown in the system, meaning that educations were denied to many, healthcare systems are broken down, many could not access for the other kinds of diseases that people were suffering, livelihood system broke down. So what this means is that there is a kind of a lot of failures that we saw in the governance. So that kind of context-specific and responsive institutions and governance systems were not in place. That is what has been exposed during this pandemic. So that means that health system, education system, and other infrastructure, communication systems, that should serve the communities in those people who are in the last mile or in the rural areas. None of these were able to be met by the government. So we very glaringly have seen during this COVID the failure of the governance systems and what is lacking. In spite of this, yes, therefore, indigenous peoples were left to fend themselves. And youth, women, etc., have come forward, whether it's in the aspect of health aid, relief work, or in education work that needs to be done. And this has been done by the communities themselves a lot in response to the situation. But what we're also seeing is that the communities have been left too long because the COVID has been dragged on for a long time. And therefore, they're becoming more vulnerable and their defense is losing. That is what has come out. The other aspect is more political in nature, therefore, that what we are seeing is that this whole trend is moving towards more authoritarianism and regression of rights of indigenous peoples. What we have glaringly seen is in Philippines, and now, of course, the recent case in Myanmar, as one of the speakers shared, and that issue of this shrinking of civic space in general, not just for indigenous peoples. So these are the kind of trends that we have seen: detrimental laws and solutions, and shrinking of civic space, and where more and more indigenous peoples are being criminalized, including other communities. So I would like to just end as part of my closing remark is that what we are seeing here then is this issue where the speakers raised that in the post-COVID, in the recovery, we need to look at long-term solutions and long-term vision. And in this, some of the speakers have also articulated the need for recognizing the custodianship and indigenous peoples as agencies who will be providing solutions, the application of indigenous knowledge, our worldviews, and governance systems towards which we must also look towards. And that's how I think this is the part of vision that the participants, the speakers have articulated, fits into the kind of vision of the new social contract that we're looking at as part of the international theme for the World's Indigenous Peoples Day. And along with this, what I would like to just give one point here is that We are seeing a lot of progressive international laws with reference to indigenous peoples and to also with reference to other communities and so on. And some reforms are happening at the UN level. But all these agreements and reforms that is happening are not being translated into real action on the ground by the governments to give meaning to all this. And this is one of the biggest challenge. And therefore, what we are also facing as we look at this call for new social contract, what we must also reflect upon is that we are also in a meaning crisis. We seem like, for example, in this agreement, no matter how much agreement we make, if we do not know the precondition for making meaningful agreements, we are not going to go anywhere. We're going to spiral deeper down into the kind of chaos that we are experiencing. So as we look towards this new social contract, we must also try to uncover and recover this meaning of making meaningful agreements, the principle of making meaningful agreements. That unless we are prepared for that, making agreements is worthless and it has no meaning unless we're able to honor it. And as I wish my indigenous brothers and sisters and all our allies and supporters meaningful celebration of the world's Indigenous Peoples Day, I would like to end by just quoting back one of the speaker's words, where he said that his courage is the only weapon he has to face at this point of time. I would further elaborate on this to say that I believe that it is our courage that is the most powerful weapon, because guns and bombs maybe can only kill and create a more darker world, but it is this kind of courage of ordinary citizens and communities that awakens the spirit of this journey when we're talking about our vision for a new social contract. So by this courage, I'm sure that more and more people will join us in this journey of awakening. Thank you very much from my side and wish you all the best.